Iran reopens its space for international flights over its central and western regions. Qatar announces that the Mediators are in contact with Israel and Hamas to push for a truce in the Gaza Strip. And Russian President Putin announces a third round of negotiations with Ukraine.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
The Iranian spokesperson for the Ministry of Roads and Urban Development has announced that Iran has reopened its space for international flights over its central and western regions. He added that this decision, based on safety assessments by the Civil Aviation Organization, follows a partial reopening on June 25th after a 12-day conflict with Israel. The airspace will now accommodate international transit flights as well as domestic and international flights from eastern ports. Mourners in black have gathered in Tehran for the funeral of military commanders, nuclear scientists and civilians killed in the recent conflict with Israel. The funeral honored at least 60 victims, including prominent military leaders, with their coffins displayed amid flags and floral tributes. At least 16 scientists and 10 senior commanders were among those mourned at the funeral, according to state media, including Armed Forces Chief Major General Mohammad Bagheri, Revolutionary Guards Commander General Hossein Salami, and Guards Air Space Force Chief General Amir Ali Hajizadeh. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has declared that Iran does not know the meaning of surrender, stating that history will record that Iranians shed blood and did not relinquish their land. Araghchi emphasized that while buildings may be destroyed, national pride is more valuable, and Iranians remain steadfast, determined, and proud in the face of adversity. U.S. President Donald Trump has indicated he might consider bombing Iran again if the country enriches uranium to a concerning level. He supported inspections of Iran's nuclear sites that were bombed recently. At a press conference, Trump expressed his intent to respond to Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei's remarks about Iran's attack on a U.S. base in Qatar.
I think this is bigger than trade. Yes, please, go ahead. Go ahead.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced he would not lift sanctions against Iran and warned of potential airstrikes if Iran pursued nuclear weapons. He dismissed claims by Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei that Iran won the war against Israel. Trump expressed hope for the IAEA inspections of Iran's nuclear facilities, but stated that malicious statements from Iran led him to abandon plans for sanctions relief. And for more analysis, we now move to Hala Al-Hamlawi in our newsroom. To you, Hala.
Thank you so much, Mona. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al-Ahram newspaper managing editor, Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri. Welcome to Qnews, sir. Now, what do you believe drives Araghchi's firm statement about Iran's refusal to surrender? Does this even suggest that Iran may not be willing to compromise in future negotiations?
Definitely both sides, Israel and the United States, and even Israel, that carried out the war that lasted for 12 days, was dealt a great deal of casualties and damage. The volume of assassinations in Iran was significant, and there are around 30 leaders who were assassinated and 16 scientists in the field of nuclear energy. Israel also has taken a lot of damage and casualties in military and intelligence sites. So now both sides are certain that there must be a ceasefire, and Iran in sort of a weak position due to the Trump pressure after the escalation that he led. And stemming from that, Iran wants to resume the negotiations provided that Trump and the United States respect the supreme leader Khamenei, and to have a settlement politically regarding the nuclear program without restraints or threats by Washington and Tel Aviv in the upcoming phase, and granting Iran the opportunity to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes.
Mm-hmm. So, what possible repercussions could arise from Trump's decision not to lift sanctions on Iran, particularly given, of course, the current tensions?
Definitely, Trump and Israel started in the past few hours after not being sure about the location of enriched uranium, 4.5 kilograms, were they buried in the ground or were they bombed after bombing nuclear reactors in Fordo and Natanz and Asfahan. And if these 4 kilograms were inside, so far we do not have any sort of certainty about the whereabouts of these enriched uranium. Iran might have moved it to a remote location to manufacture the bomb later. We have seen the defense minister and Trump stated that if Iran has enriched uranium, they will be bombed strongly in the upcoming phase. And Iran wants to divert the attention by engaging in negotiations, and they are seeking to have some economic gains and to lift the sanctions because they were endured a lot of economic casualties and they are facing a lot of challenges currently.
Mm-hmm. So with Iran seemingly halting its cooperation with the IAEA, will this complicate efforts to reach an agreement on Iran's nuclear program, and does it even suggest a potential shift towards weaponization?
Disagreement between Iran and the head of the IAEA, which is a personal disagreement, as stated by Foreign Minister Arakji, that Brasi has ill intentions towards Iran, and there are intelligence breaches regarding the nuclear program, as some information were moved to Israel. And the IAEA did not condemn the Israeli bombings. These disagreements might be settled by providing international guarantees for Iran in the upcoming phase to provide some sort of integrity of the agency's work and action inside Iran, and to actually find some sort of supervision, and therefore settling disputes between the agency and Iran will happen through consensus on international guarantees set by the United Nations to define new principles on the supervision of international experts for nuclear sites in Iran, given transparency and non-intervention, to set unacceptable terms on Iran without pressures from the United States or the agency not to corner Iran once again and to lose its pressuring cards.
So could war break out again soon between Iran and Israel, in your own point of view?
All the military and political findings stresses that what happened was the first round. These 12 days of ongoing war was the first round, and if the uranium enrichment problem was not solved, I think the war will resume once again because Iran has the intention to resume the nuclear program no matter what the pressures are, and this was what was announced by Khamenei recently. In contrast, the pressures of the Israel and the US to wage more military operations in the event that there is hidden enriched uranium. Iran now is seeking negotiations to not to create this opportunity for Israel and US to fight once again. I am now relying on the negotiations and what will Iran provide to preserve its nuclear program if the negotiations are resumed next week as reported between Iran and the United States.
Well, that was Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri from Cairo. He is Al Ahram newspaper managing editor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Now we go back again to Mona Msalhi in our studio. To you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Hala. And now we move to the latest developments in Gaza. The Qatari Foreign Ministry has stated that mediators are in contact with both Israel and Hamas to capitalize on this week's ceasefire between Iran and Israel in an effort to push for a truce in the Gaza Strip. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Majid Al-Ansari added that if this opportunity and momentum are not seized, it will be yet another missed chance among many recent opportunities to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. US President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about a potential ceasefire in the Gaza war, suggesting it could be achieved within a week. Speaking at an Oval Office event, he mentioned discussions with the key individuals involved in the ceasefire efforts between Israel and Hamas. Trump also stated his confidence in resolving tensions with North Korea, highlighting his positive relationship with North Korea's Kim Jong-un.
But you're right, no other president could do it. They tried and they didn't even try. I don't think.
Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has climbed to over 56,400 and 133,000 more injuries. Eyewitnesses reported that Israeli forces opened fire on civilians waiting for food near a US-backed aid distribution center in southern Gaza, resulting in 7 deaths and numerous injuries, some very serious. In a separate incident, another Palestinian was killed and 39 were injured while waiting for aid in central Gaza. Additionally, at least 32 deaths were reported across the enclave due to Israeli airstrikes and shelling. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has criticized the US-backed aid operation in Gaza as inherently unsafe, stating it is causing deaths. He condemned the militarization of aid distribution and emphasized that the civilians are being killed while seeking food Guterres called for political courage to achieve a ceasefire, noting that 400 Palestinians have died while trying to access aid since the blockade was lifted. UNRWA has declared that the new aid distribution system in Gaza has turned into a killing ground. The agency explained that reports confirm the deaths of over 400 people waiting for aid since the new system was implemented. It stressed the need to revert to the UN-led distribution mechanisms and put an end to this disgrace situation. UNRWA further emphasized the urgent need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the lifting of the blockade to restore the regular flow of life-saving supplies. WHO spokesman Christian Lindmeier has emphasized the critical humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where essential supplies are severely lacking and aid is blocked. He stated that people are starving, sick and dying daily in Gaza, while food and medical assistance just across the border, waiting for weeks. That comes as the Humanitarian Foundation faces controversy over its aid distribution practices.
People are starving, people are sick,
Lebanese media reported that one person was killed and another injured on Saturday after an Israeli drone targeted a vehicle in the town of Qnews, southern Lebanon, despite the ceasefire agreement that took effect on November 27th. Israel has committed thousands of violations, resulting in hundreds of deaths and injuries. Its army has partially withdrawn from southern Lebanon but continues to occupy 5 Lebanese hills seized during the recent war. The UN has stressed the importance of the United Nations interim force in Lebanon continuing its mission due to the incomplete implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1701 concerning the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. The Lebanese government has requested an extension of UNIFIL's mandate until August 31st next year. UN Under-Secretary General Jean-Pierre Lacroix highlighted the vital role of UN peacekeeping in maintaining stability in the region. Moving to Sudan, Sudan's newly appointed Ministers of Defense and Interior were sworn in before the President of the Transitional Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, in the presence of Prime Minister Idris Kemal. Earlier this week, Sudanese Prime Minister Kamil Idris issued a decree appointing Lieutenant General Hassan Dawood Kayan as Minister of Defense and Police Lieutenant General Babikir Samra Mustafa Ali as Minister of Interior. The International Organization for Migration, affiliated with the United Nations, announced the landing of the first flight in Darfur as part of an air bridge delivering aid from the European Union. This marks the first humanitarian aid flight to land in the Darfur region in Western Sudan since the outbreak of conflict on April 15, 2023, which had disrupted airport operations. In Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced that Russia and Ukraine will hold a third round of negotiations following a successful Daytony exchange. The talks set to take place in Istanbul will focus on a draft memorandum for settlements discussions Ukrainian Defense Minister Rostam Umerov expressed hopes for a meeting between the leaders of both nations to foster substantive dialogue after addressing humanitarian issues. Ukrainian authorities have reported a Russian strike on a building in Odessa, prompting evacuations that included children. Emergency services confirmed 2 fatalities and 14 injuries from the attack. The Odessa mayor stated that rescuers discovered the bodies of a couple killed when a drone struck their apartments. Japan's chief tariff negotiator Rosie Akazawa and U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick agreed to continue negotiations aimed at reaching a deal that serves the national interests of both countries. A statement issued by Japanese authorities said that Akazawa and Lutnick held a productive discussion, though no resolution was reached on key issues including tariffs on Japanese car imports. France Meteorological Agency has raised the alert level to orange in 53 cities across the country in anticipation of an intense heat wave on Sunday. Large parts of France are already experiencing high temperatures this Saturday, with high ranging between 34 and 38 and reaching nearly 40 in southern areas near the Mediterranean. In Italy, 17 cities have been placed on high alert, including northern cities such as Milan, Bologna and Turin, as well as southern cities like Naples and Palermo, where maximum temperatures are expected to reach 39. To our economic segment, and U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the U.S. is immediately halting trade negotiations with Canada due to its digital services tax on tech companies, labeling it a direct and blatant attack. In a post on Truth Social, Trump stated that based on the egregious tax, they are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada, effective immediately, and warned of upcoming tariffs for Canadian businesses. In the first 5 months of 2025, China issued local government bonds with a total value of approximately 1.98 trillion yuan. According to the Chinese Ministry of Finance, the insurance included 351 billion yuan in general purpose bonds, while the remainder consisted of special purpose bonds. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Iran reopens its airspace for international flights over the central and western regions. Qatar announces that the mediators are in contact with Israel and Hamas to push for a truce in the Gaza Strip. And Vladimir Putin announces a third round of negotiations with Ukraine. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and good night.